Welcome back. We turn our attention now to Congresswoman Lowy's opponent in the 17th District congressional race, Republican Chris Day. The 29-year-old first-time candidate is an Iraq and Afghanistan war veteran and the son of Rockland County executive Ed Day. You've said during the course of this campaign that you support tweaking Obamacare. Republicans in the House have voted 40-plus times to repeal Obamacare. You've said you support a 10-10 minimum wage. Republicans in the House have opposed any increase in the minimum wage. Why should voters give another vote to John Boehner and a House Republican majority that has positions that even go further than your positions in some cases?
Well, first, I haven't said necessarily tweak Obamacare. We need a full reform of our healthcare system. I just don't think chanting repeal, repeal, repeal over and over again is a magic solution. That said, the problem in D.C. is not just the Republicans. It's entrenched politicians. It's the current system. It's the system of campaign to your base, raise money for the next election, and kick cans down the road. I'm all about tackling those issues that we've been facing here. We've got immigration problems. We've got balancing the budget. We've got the economy. These all didn't just show up. The foreign policy issues didn't just show up yesterday. They've been building and building for the last decade because our career politicians have been ignoring the issues. I'm going to work within the majority, which is going to be in charge no matter what. No one expects them to lose control, to try to influence legislation and get things done. You know, our current Congresswoman, she got 0 bills passed in 2013. It's not a matter of why you're ineffective. If you're ineffective, you just are, and we need to try a new approach.
How do you influence the debate within your own caucus, then, to bring it back to a more moderate position, one that's more in line with what you've been campaigning on?
You know, the big thing is talking to people in a way that they understand and making sure you reach them in the principles that they approach governance with. You know, as a Republican, I believe in limited government because I think it works better. I believe in liberty. I believe in individual freedom. I think using those principles to explain why a certain issue that might not appeal necessarily to, say, a Kentucky or a Texas Republican, as opposed to just lobbing bombs at them from the other side of the aisle, is a better way to get things done. Now, everything's built on coalitions in government. I don't think even John Boehner expects to get the rightmost part of his caucus to get certain things done. But I'm sure that there are members of the leadership, and I know there are certain congresspeople, including Chris Gibson upstate, who are working to do that and reach across the aisle to Democrats who are willing to work and work within their own caucus to make things get done down there that they just haven't been doing.
You touched on immigration, and looking at your campaign website, it says, Chris believes that we must first secure our border and our ports, obviously before immigration reform gets done. What's the magic number? Is the number of illegal immigrants or border crossings have to go down to 0 before we can begin conversations about immigration
I think
reform?
you're never going to get to 0, obviously. It needs to be such that you feel confident that you're interdicting an overwhelming majority of the people who are trying to get into the country, because it's not safe for our national security to not know who's coming in, and it's not good for the people who are trying to immigrate. We need to have a reformed legal immigration system. When I was at Columbia Business School, I had a lot of international students there, and they were all sweating it out, waiting, hoping they'd get their visas sponsored so they wouldn't have to get sent back to their home countries instead of being employed here. That's wrong. We shouldn't be educating people, sending them back home. It speaks to the broken legal immigration system we have. You have to do it all. You have to but the border must be secure before you start dealing with the people that are home.
That's still a slightly amorphous description of the border, though. How do you know when you'll have that overwhelming majority, as you described it, of border crossings that are stopped? How do you know when you get to the point when it's okay to bring up immigration reform?
Yeah, at a certain point, you do have to trust the experts on the ground, the Border Patrol, the folks down there. You have to talk about benchmarks in terms of amount of cameras, fencing, that sort of thing. But it's not just that. It's also percentage of inspected containers in the ports, not just for people, but also for all other sorts of contraband. If we have a totally insecure border, our economy is threatened, and also our national security is threatened. And again, the people who are trying to get into this country deserve a better route than sneaking through the desert and being taken advantage of by human smugglers. They deserve to have a proper route to apply and get in normally without all the red tape that's currently there.
Your opponent, Nita Lowey, you've disagreed with some of her positions. You've been pretty vocal about it. Is it that you disagree with her positions, or you think she's been ineffective at serving the district itself?
I think it's a little bit of both. You know, Nita Lowey, on many issues where I think the district would rather her be a little more independent, has chosen to hew the party line a little too tightly. I think of Israel, where President Obama has made deals with Iran, where he has not supported Israel in their conflict with Hamas, when he cut off flights to Israel during that conflict, and when he hasn't cut off funding to Hamas through the Palestinian Authority. This district's very pro-Israel. She should have stood apart from the administration and criticized them on that. And further, I just don't think that she has actually delivered anything she's saying. You know, she talks about being able to bring stuff home for the district. According to the federal government's own websites, governmentspending.gov, it's usaspending.gov, sorry, 85% of House districts have brought more funding back in grants and contracts than our district has in the last decade. That's a lack of effectiveness, and that's been in Democratic Congresses, Republican Congresses, Democrat presidents, Republican presidents. It's still the same.
Finally, a little bit about you. You're 29 years old. Mm-hmm. You're an Army veteran. You work in private equity and venture capital. Other than managing your father's campaign for Rockland County Executive, you have no political experience.
That's correct.
Are you qualified for Congress? And if your father wasn't Ed Day, do you think you'd be the nominee in the 17th District?
Well, you know, the opportunity I had was because I managed a successful campaign. I was asked to manage a congressional race. That gentleman backed out, and then I was approached to run for Congress. So I can't say that if I hadn't managed that race, it wouldn't have occurred, but that's what I built it off of, my work succeeding in making that race happen in Rockland County. That said, I believe my experience in the private sector and in serving this country overseas gives you the real-world practical experience that you need in Congress. You don't get experience to get things done by just staying in office forever. You get experience to get things done by learning business principles, implementing them, serving in foreign policy situations directly overseas, leading men and women in combat. That's what you need to do. You don't need to just sit there in D.C. and keep collecting a paycheck.
Chris Day, the Republican nominee for Congress in the 17th District. Thanks very much. Best of luck.
Thank you for having me.
Up next, we dive into the race for Congress in New York's 19th District. That when we return.